Hey, I'm here with Tim Wainwright. He is the founder and CEO of Security Risk Advisors, SRA. Tim, actually, you were a member of the network, weren't you? Weren't you the head of data security
No,
somewhere?
I'll tell you the genesis of it. First of all, thanks for having me. No, but if we're talking about the start of security risk advisors, there is a CISO executive network tie-in that I think is actually pretty significant from the very
Yeah,
beginning.
remind me of that.
Should we get to that right away? I mean, you're asking the
Yeah.
questions
Oh,
about
just
me,
because
right?
it's
I mean,
it's useful to know again how you and I got connected because I've
yeah,
known you for so long now. It's probably been 12, 15 years.
15 is
And I
right.
knew there was a connection when we had
Yeah.
started the network.
Yeah. So I was at before I started Security Risk Advisors, which is almost 14 years ago now. I was at one of the big four firms doing consulting, and once I discovered consulting, like that's what I have to do. I can't not do consulting. I can't see myself doing anything else. Anyway, I was at that big four firm, and at the time, we were doing a fair amount of semantic Vontu DLP work. Remember that? Uh,
Yes.
Before DLP died for the second or third time, and now it's maybe back again with Purview and a few other things. But
I've gone to. Wow.
um, so we were all friends. We were friends with Semantic, and because we did we did as good a job as you could do with the platform back then, and Semantic was sponsoring one of your events, and their speaker to do their 20-minute spot couldn't show up, and we were in Pittsburgh. I don't remember why we were in Pittsburgh. I spent a
Yeah.
lot of time there, and you always had a really great chapter in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I had a lot of friends that went to it, so I knew about it. Anyway, I got a phone call, I guess from you or from Semantic, I don't remember which, and they were like, "Hey, can you fill in for us and do like a 20-minute spot in front of this at the time the CISO Breakfast Club,
Right.
right?" And I said, "That sounds like fun." And I went and I did it, and I had a blast. And afterwards, I said, I went back to Philadelphia where my office was, and I said, "Why don't we do these events? Like, this was great. I got to meet a bunch of CISOs all at once. They had good questions. I was able to just give them some ideas, and I realized that at least at the time, and I don't know what they do now, right? That firm didn't have like an appetite to do those types of events. I think they kind of had more of the attitude of, oh, well, people just call us. Like, we don't need to go
Right.
anywhere.
They're all inbound. The
Yeah,
big
yeah,
four are
yeah.
always that way.
Exactly. And so then, we decided probably 6 months from then or so that we were going to start SRA, Security Risk Advisors. And I remember telling the people I was starting the firm with, there were four of us at the time. I said, "Hey, I have an idea for how we're going to meet people. Like, we've got to invest in this thing."
Yep.
And we did. We did it pretty early
Yeah.
on
Oh my
with you.
gosh. Yeah,
As
you
soon, as
did a
soon as we as
handful
soon as
with
we had
us.
two nickels, we started doing events with you.
I loved it. And I know that you've won business out of it. So for that, we're very
Yeah.
thankful. So I guess this leads me into what in God's name inspired you to leave a big four and start your own thing? What was the inspiration there? And what did you hope to do?
Pretty simply, I can say what I love has changed a little bit since then, but at the time, I loved security. I still
Mhm.
like security, but back then I loved security. I
Right.
loved the details of security, and I wanted no bounds on the types of problems I would be able to solve, except for what I personally found interesting.
Hmm.
So at some of these big four firms, and again, sometimes they interpret the roles differently, but I was a pen tester back then, really a full red teamer. We did social engineering, I did physical break-ins, I lied to people on the phone for their passwords, and went home and took a shower with a full bar of soap because it didn't feel right.
Right. You didn't.
Yeah, all those things. But I After I would do that type of exercise, a client would say, "Hey, this was great." Most of the time, they enjoy they thought we did a good job, and they'd say, "Can you help us like fix our detection? Help us with our first generation SIM and all the stuff that was around back then." And I wanted to so bad, but there were bounds on that because we were at the core an accounting firm. So and to this day, I still don't know why, if you audit someone's financials, what that has anything to do with their ability to detect an
Yeah.
attacker on their network. I still can't explain it, but nobody could explain it to me then either. And so I really wanted no bounds. I wanted to be able to help my clients end to end. And I also wanted to only work on problems that, one, I thought were solvable, that we could bring something new to, and that were personally interesting. So a good example was, we knew out of the gate, we're not going to be a consultancy that helps people with identity and access management.
Right.
Not because it's not a problem, it's a problem, but we don't think we have a unique idea or spin on how to fix it, and it's just not the work we want to do. So we're not going to do that, and we
Yeah.
and we haven't to this day. We haven't spent any time on that. So
You
that was
focus on
really,
things where you have expertise, right? And can add
yeah,
the most value,
yeah,
which I mean really leads me to the question of what makes SRA unique, right? There's so many consultancies in the cybersecurity space, and you've been around and endured for almost 15 years now, and that's phenomenal. And everyone that I talk to who's worked with you in our network says the quality of your program is second to none. You get incredibly high rating from our members. So
Like,
what makes it unique? Is it because you picked things you're experts at, or what is that?
I think there's two things. One is what drives us, and always has, but it's become more clear to me in recent years than ever before. And those two things are innovation and relationships.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know how unique those are. I mean, innovations by definition are kind of unique. They kind of have to be, or they're not innovation. Relationships are not necessarily unique. But those are, and you know, someone will say people. Well, you're not going to accomplish either of those things without people.
Without,
You have to have
right.
the right type of people to do both of those. I'm more of a relationship person. And those who know me know that. And then there's people on my team and leadership who are all innovators. Like they see a problem and they solve it in a different way. But I'd say one of the things that's really made us different, especially being almost 14 years old, we're pushing 300 people here pretty soon globally, is we've grown our own way. We haven't grown like other consulting firms. We're independent. We haven't taken private equity or investment or venture capital before that. We haven't done any of that stuff. We haven't leaned on things like resell. Like we focused on providing expertise and not some of the things that kind of look. I don't think any of those things are easy, by the way, but I do believe there's no shortcuts. And the last thing is just that all of the leaders, including me, have been very hands on. And I think that's part of the no shortcuts mantra. Like
Yeah.
it's like imagine you're like a celebrity chef, which I'm not, but I know you like to eat and I like to eat too. And facing the decision of, hey, I have a really popular flagship restaurant. Should I turn this into a national chain? Or do
Right.
I maybe just want to open like an outpost in Vegas? And that's it, and call it and see how that goes, and make sure that we do a really good job at that outpost.
Right. That it's
And so
exactly like it is
yeah,
here. Right.
and so we have grown, but we've grown at a very intentionally paced way where we only add another restaurant when we know that all the other ones are still doing great.
I think staying within your capacity is important, right? And knowing that we don't just want to become a chain. You could have easily said, well, we're just going to replicate this in many, many cities across the country, and I'll lend my brand to that, which often ends up in declining satisfaction by the client, right? And I
Yeah,
think you've stayed with, I really want to satisfy the client. I want them happy. And well, that's the reports we get. So given that you take all this pride, and I think you should, in being innovative and having strong relationships with your clients. How do you cut through the noise in a world where there's an awful lot of cybersecurity consultancies, right?
yeah.
You seem to get a lot of repeat business, I think, right? That's a huge statistic that's important. But how do you cut through that noise?
The first thing relates to innovations, and it's don't chase anyone.
Hmm,
Don't if someone else is already really good at something that's innovative, like don't try to catch up to them and like write the same thing with a better reporting screen. Like it's no one's going to be impressed by that. It's not going to give them a reason to say we're and look, a lot of our client base is in the Fortune 500, not all of it, but that's how we started and that's been our focus. And the idea has been, if the Fortune 500 is interested in what we can do for them, then we'll help anybody, but we'll have,
right.
you know, the referenceability and the client base to do that. So it's don't chase anyone. If we're going to build something like a piece of software, like we've done with Vector, there isn't another Vector, and there kind of still isn't. There's some things that are adjacent to it, but we're not trying to do with our platform what, you know, exactly what someone else is doing. In fact, if we see that someone else has done a certain thing well, we kind of steer away from that. Say, we'll use that for that, and use Vector for this. And Vector, for those who don't know, is just it's a free platform we've been publishing for many years now that a lot of CISO exec network members are using, but also very broadly, it's being used around the world. And then I guess the other thing too for cutting through the noise is, you know, fix something that's never worked well, or do it totally differently. Like have a different take on something. And there's services that you have to offer that are great services, like my
Yeah.
own background in pen testing. Of course we do that. And we get good reports on that too. But even though I know that my pen testing team are among the best just because of their results, I'm not gonna tell a CISO, hey, we have the best pen testers in the world. I can't prove that. What I can say is we're very, very good, and you'll find a lot of organizations that will say the same. But can we develop an area that's less known, like purple teams, for example, which we've become really well known for? Can we develop that area and actually move towards a claim to say, look, you're gonna have a hard time finding someone who understands this space as well as we
Mhm.
do. So fixing something different. And when you're building an organization, that can't be all of the things that you do. You can't just especially if you're going to have some diversity and do different types of things, unless you're really saying, coming in and saying, we do one thing in security and one thing only, which I think is a difficult strategy to execute.
I
You
think
really have
so
a
too.
lot of eggs in that basket. And sometimes the demand or the interest in that type of thing will change. And if you're not constantly building something else that is changing with CISO's needs at the same time, you'll be at risk for longevity and for being able to help your clients where they need to be helped.
Yeah, I worry about companies that do this. We're really, really good at this one thing and we stuck with that. And sometimes they'll dig their heels and say, well, we didn't want to butt up against anybody else. We're just pros at this. At some point, your revenue model breaks down. You're like, okay, well, they only need so much of that. So you
Yeah.
have to diversify, which you learned as you went and continue to diversify, but you stay within sort of your realm of expertise. Without naming clients, is there sort of a case study in your head where you go, we added so much value to this particular client in this particular sector, and it's just a showcase of the way that we can help clients?
Yeah, for sure. Probably a lot, but one of the ones I think of right away because it was within the past couple of years and just such a great headline was actually one of your members. And again, not naming people,
Right.
one of my favorite people, and I think one of your favorite people
Yep.
too. But CISO came to us and said, our organization didn't have a good year during COVID, right? We didn't have a good year as a result. And there's a lot of cost pressure on security right now. And I really want to defend my headcount. That's my number one priority. And I have a lot of tech spend. What can I, do you have any ideas? How can I reduce my spend here? And we were able to apply a methodology that we'd been developing for about a year prior that we call security data pipeline. And it's the idea that your SIM, which is very expensive and
Hmm.
always has been a very expensive storage, very expensive tool. Maybe we need to rethink the way that we're using it. And it maybe doesn't need to be even the center of our security universe anymore. I think there's a long, it's kind of the financial services did this in the beginning and everybody kind of followed suit, 15 years, well, more than that, 20 years ago. And where they bought these SIMs and they started cramming all their data into it, it's very expensive. So we started investigating the idea of making a security data lake the center of your universe
Hmm.
and having cheaper storage that you can keep longer as long as you can work with it flexibly enough. And realizing too that people were putting all sorts of data in their SIM that didn't need to be there. Firewall allows and denies, DHCP, DNS, like this is NetFlow. This is like useful stuff, but those things, and this is where pen test background comes in. We knew they don't have anything to do with actually triggering an alert that a SOC analyst is going to deal with at 3 a.m. on the 4th of July. Like it's not, it's investigative data. It's useful to have, but it doesn't have to be in this expensive storage. So we pioneered that. So what we helped your member with is set up a system that was focused on having a security data lake, having a SIM hang off of it as a tool, but not having everything go into it. And the headline was they were spending $1 million for their SIM, and we brought the total cost of the ecosystem down to less than 200K.
That's phenomenal, right?
Yeah,
That
so,
kind
so
of thing, that's a huge
it's
case,
cool.
right?
I love it, Bill, because it's never been no one's ever called security risk advisors and said, hey, can you help us save money? That they call us and say, hey, we think we have some risks, and you help us
Right.
identify and
Mitigate these
articulate
risks,
them
right?
and help us get better. I'm like, yeah, that's what we do. Like security people have never saved anybody any money. Like not even just on the consulting side, on the CISO side. Like we spend money. Like that's what we're there to do. We're there to protect
Yep.
an organization. So
And
I
actually,
thought
I
that was
think,
cool because it was
well,
just
in the today's economy, which again, the market sounds great. Market seems like it's flourishing, but the fact is the economy itself is not doing great. And anybody who's in tech knows that. We see massive layoffs in a lot of tech companies,
mm,
including cybersecurity companies. And we know that we ask our members, budget up, down, or flat. Almost everybody's flat, some are down, right? So I think that becomes a service area is tools rationalization and budget maximization. How do we maximize your shrinking budget to get the most security bang for your buck? I mean, I think you'll
yeah.
end up, well, hopefully you've replicated that for some other
Oh,
client.
we're doing them back to back. We've got our
But
clients lined up to help them with that same problem. It's a
it's
lot of fun to
brilliant.
do.
The brilliant solution. Well, that's awesome. I love that. So you knew this was going to come up, but AI popping on the scene, is it beneficial? Have you found a use for AI that benefits your clients? And conversely, are you approaching your clients going, be prepared for AI? It could be a security nightmare.
Well, first of all, we don't do FUD in the first place. We don't have to
Right.
scare our clients. That they're a lot of them are appropriately freaked out, and I think a lot of it is just because of the impact on. I think more of my clients are concerned about societal impact than
Right.
specifically security risk, right? With misinformation risks and the way it's so easy to imitate someone. I mean, we had a co-op who's joining us full time just last summer. We realized that it was a really bright individual, and a lot of our co-ops are, but this person had done a lot of outside work in AI, and we said, you know what, just play with AI. For the next 6 months, just play with
Right.
AI, and we'll give you some guidance, but we want to see what you can do. And not too long into that, I heard a recording of myself resigning from SRA
Right.
as chief executive and appointing the co-op as my successor.
Right.
And
It was
and it
very
was me,
agreeable.
Bill. It was me. It was my
Right.
voice. The only thing that was wrong around it was I was, well, now this is going to sound like it was dead on. I was kind of rambling a little bit. The more I think about it, it was completely authentic.
But yeah, it's just amazing to me, right? The deep
Yeah.
fakes are going to be scary. And
Oh,
how do we
right.
cut through that? How does
Yeah.
anybody cut through that? How do you detect it? There will be tools that will detect it. I have this weird naked eye ability where I can look at a video that comes in through a reel or Instagram, and I instantly know it's fake. And my wife said, "How do you know that?" I said, look at the headlights on that car, or there's something fuzzy or weird about the image. It's clearly not real. And the naked eye's picking it up now, but it
Yeah.
won't be for long. Pretty soon, those will look unbelievably real. So,
I think you've got a gift there. I think a lot of people can't see what you're seeing with them, and a lot of it looks very, very real. But on the applicability
yeah, to your offerings, like as AI,
to what we do, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, do we help, with AI risk assessments and things like that? Yes. I mean, they're very high level, but that whole concept is very high level. I think there's probably a lot of consulting dollars being spent just, in boardrooms asking questions, and I'm sure that's good work. For me, the number one thing for applying AI is honesty. Like, it is that, first of all, is this really AI or is this marketing? Right. So our approach is, what is a real application of
yeah,
this? And I'll give you one that we just did, because it's so simple, but it blows me away. So we do 24/7 SecOps, right? And we have an XDR platform that's built around Microsoft, which I think is smart because they're not going anywhere no matter how many
correct.
outages they have. That's life, and they're kind of here to stay. And the platforms, by the way, if you stitch their stuff together correctly, it works really well. And not a lot of people
We have a
understand
lot of
that.
members who believe that. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't at first, but we've been working with it for many years now, and it's actually really good. But here's one of the things that we did is um, use, again, a data lake centric approach. We have all this data in the data lake. We have all of the tickets and things that have been worked in Sentinel, and threat hunts and things that have been conducted in Azure Data Explorer. All these different components. But the smart use of AI is basically having a large language model create a shift summary of everything that happened in the last 8 hours,
right, right,
because you're not going to have the same people like work through the night. You can't do that, right? And shift handoff for any SOC team is at least a half hour of like what happened, and handing it to someone else so they can go walk their dog and go to sleep, and
yeah,
go on a date, or everything that normal people do. SOC people who work in SOC, by the way, are human beings, and they
right.
live
We
they live
forget
their
that.
lives as normal, just sometimes on different schedules. So our innovation team created, our CTO in particular did a lot of the stuff hands on the first iterations of just automatically generating everything that happened, and it also automatically generates the metrics that people care about, like mean time to response, and mean time to close. Like, what was in the past 8 hours? What was that? And I think what's cool about that is anybody can access a report like that. So the CISO could be like, I need to answer a question right now, or I want to know what's happening right now, and
Right.
just pull up the latest report, or generate it every hour if you want. It doesn't matter. Like, that's the compute and speed power of using something like AI for a task like that. And imagine instead having a team of analysts put together a report, even a daily report, let alone an automated, 8-hour shift report. So to me, that's a smart, honest use of AI that's actually
Mhm.
pretty useful.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Automate a task that we've done manually for a long time and probably do it better, right? Capture things we might have forgotten, right? Pulling data in. I think that precisely the way. I mean, I use ChatGPT more every day. I was just putting a description together for our next year's set of roundtables. I gave it our topic heading and said, hey, what 7 topics might be discussed as a result of this title with a group of CISOs in a room? I was amazed at how strong
Yeah.
it came out. Like very good. I had to go through and clean a few things up, but overall, like that saved me a lot of thinking. So yeah, I think there's practical uses to it. Let's talk about just the industry as a whole. If you were advising a cybersecurity startup, whether it's a product or another solution provider like you that does, services, what advice would you give them in today's market? Would you pick another pick another
Yeah.
job. Don't do that. Or maybe it would be the younger you, right? Going back to if you had to do all over again. But what advice would you give to a cybersecurity startup today?
Um, Two things: know why you're in it, and know how long you want to be in that thing. And the second one's more new because you'd say, should you start a cybersecurity company now, or should you start an AI company, um, or a data science company, which is, I guess, the same thing now. The latter is very terrifying to me because if you were going to, and I know security, and I'm not an AI expert, but it just seems to me that every AI company that comes out that isn't actually a chip manufacturer, it instantly becomes obsolete. So I feel
Right.
like your company could be over as soon as you've started it if you're in that space. However, that is the hot space. So know how long you want to be in it. You're like, I want to start an AI company and like be in business for the next 15 years. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if you can do that if you want to. That
Right.
might not be a thing. Like time will tell,
Yeah.
right? But in cybersecurity, I say know why you're in it, right?
Hmm.
So I did it early mid career, right?
Hmm.
And I think I shared in the beginning why I did it. I really did care about the subject matter, and I really wanted to solve problems. Now I care about people. I find security interesting and amusing, but I'm not like passionately in love with it like I
Yeah.
was when I started. My own priorities changed, but I do really care about giving people opportunities. So that's not why I started it, but why I'm in it now. I want
Yeah.
to start 1,000 careers before I'm done, and I'm in the 300s. So I still
Yeah.
got I still got ways to go. When I say start careers, I don't count someone who used to work at another security company and moved over here. I love them. I'm glad that they came and they're super useful and I
Right.
appreciate their leadership and all their contributions, but they don't count. What counts is when we give a student an opportunity or we give a
Right.
career changer an opportunity because they want to be in the space. That's where my count starts. So I know why I'm doing it now, but it's not why I did it then.
Yeah.
But I think you're allowed to change your motivation as
Yeah.
long
I
as
agree.
as long as you treat people well and do the right thing. But when I say know why you're in it, if you're in it because you've been a CISO for a while and you're bored and you think it might be more interesting, you may be right.
Yeah.
But know that that's why. Yeah, and you may find that that's not the case. You may find it's a style of work that you don't like, having to think about things you didn't used to, and not whatever the differences may be. But also, if you're in it because you think there's money in it and you want to make money, just be honest with yourself about that.
Right. Right. I mean,
Because because
yeah, this is a lucrative market. I'm in it to make money,
it
right?
can be. It can be, and it will help you. It will be an honest way to help you make decisions for what you're going to spend your money on and not. And in my organization, we've always prioritized reinvesting in the organization, investing in the culture, and that means real dollars that could have gone into owners' pockets that we said
Right.
that's not why we did this. So we knew why. So know why you're starting it. And by the way, for anybody who's thinking about doing this, if you said, "Hey, there's money to be made, and that's why I want to do it," I wouldn't judge you for that. That's just being honest with one of
Right. Just be honest. I'm in
the
this. Yeah.
priority.
I
It's
picked
just
the sector
priority.
that's really hot and want to make some
Yeah,
money in. So
yeah,
you made a conscious decision. We talked about this last time I visited your office. Is sort of I'm not going down the VAR path. We're going to be pretty much services only. I mean, there might be 1 or 2 things you sort of represent, but you made a conscious decision. We're not going to VAR. Maybe it's because margins are too thin or it's a pain in the ass or whatever. What was sort of the strategic thinking there? And then the last question would be, what's the future, right? What does SRA look like in a couple of years?
sure. Well, on the VAR question, we found that our clients valued that we were going to be independent.
Hmm.
And from a practical perspective, I've seen a pattern over the past 20 years of nobody stays on top forever in security when it comes to solutions.
Right.
It's never happened.
Right.
It's never happened. But no solution, no EDR, no SIM, no threat detection platform, no DLP, no anything has ever remained the top thing forever. And I never wanted to be in a spot where we had sold something to a client, and it wasn't the right thing for them a year later, right?
Yeah.
Or much worse, we already know it's not the best solution and we're still selling it to
And
you.
you
Like
still stuff. Yeah.
that's a lack of, it's a lot. I was afraid. I'm not saying that VARs can't have integrity. They
Right.
can.
No, no.
They have to. I think they have to be careful about that. But I knew that it would be a challenge for us if
Yeah.
we chose that path. It would be a
Yeah.
challenge to our integrity, and I just didn't. I didn't even want that in part of in our equation.
I think a wise decision. And then what's the future look like for, I mean, are there some innovations coming or things, I mean, I know you and I are both, I mean, I'm aging much more rapidly than you are. There's an end
You
for
look the same as I remember. All
I'm,
the exercise.
at some point I'm going to age out of this business and, someone will take it over for me. As passionate as I am about it after almost 20 years, still passionate. But I mean, even you said, I was passionate about security. Now you run the business, right? It's a little different. What's the future look like at SRA?
Is the people. And I don't just mean like, oh, like we value, of course we value the people. It's how many careers and opportunities can we start? How many opportunities can we give? And we're bringing, new leadership into it too. That's the impact to me. It's not, we've never had the approach of let's build a great company by going out and hiring the best people in the industry. Um, a foolish thing to say, first of all. The best and most experienced people in the industry, like they've already got a thing going on, right? If I was like, hey, Bill, you should come join SRA, you'd be like, yeah, Tim, I got like my own thing, right?
Right. Yep.
You figured that out already. So that's not a good strategy. And we knew that from the beginning too. It's really investing is going to campus and saying, we know you have a crummy cybersecurity degree. No offense to every single
Right.
college.
Right. What you learned in those books is not
Yeah,
very applicable.
there are exceptions. There are exceptions, and thankfully, I
Yeah.
see that changing. I think the campus programs are becoming more modern and more applied, but it has taken a minute. Like it's taken a long time for that to happen. But to me, that's real investment. Is saying we're going to pay you, a good starting salary, a salary that people in other fields get to after 5, 6, or 10 years, right? We're going to pay you a good starting salary, and invest in you, knowing that you might not be someone who is super useful in 6 months. Like some people, some young people just jump right in. Career changers, in particular, can have a maturity, that just adds a lot to the team because they've had other jobs. They also know that, they also, are quicker to know that the grass isn't always greener when things aren't quite going their way. They were in a career they didn't like before, and now they're in this kind of interesting dynamic field. But to me, that's the future: is how many of those opportunities can we create, maintain quality. And when I say we don't hire outside people, of course we do, right? And we've grown
Mhm.
a lot of leadership from the inside. It's having that balanced team. I wrote an article recently about, I called it a new vision for red teams. And red teamers tend to be very highly compensated in the industry, right? Because there's just a lot of buzz around what they do. And I think, look, they're talented people, but they're no more important than anybody else on the team. And the article says that, but it also says, if you're building a red team internally and your red team is entirely senior people with awesome backgrounds who are sitting around and maintaining persistence on your own network all year, first of all, you're not getting enough value for it, but that's not healthy.
Right.
Like if your red team leaders don't care about investing in the next generation, they're the wrong leaders.
Yeah.
You can have a couple, maybe you have a big enough budget to have a couple people like that, but I would say you should always have someone who's focused on finding someone who is going to be better than you and just completely leaning into that, and wanting more for them than you had for yourself, and wanting it to be easier for them than it was for you to kind of crawl through your career and build your quals and build your reputation. Like do that for someone else. So the future is, um, a, a multiplying effect of SRA being the launch for a lot of careers. I also, when I say launch, I don't intend, and this hasn't been our history, to have people come in and leave us in 2 years. Like
Right.
that's not successful either. Like they actually stay here for a while. And I've started doing, and I did two of them today, 5-year check-ins. So people who've been here for five
Wow.
years. It's so, Bill, it's so special
It is.
because when you've been
In
somewhere for
today's
five
market,
years,
it's remarkable.
You've been here when you've been here for 5 years. The first thing I say is thank you. You could be anywhere, but you're still here. So
Yeah.
so help me not screw it up,
Yeah.
and help me understand how SRA is going to continue to be an interesting place for you, like the
Yeah.
next thing you want to do. And tell me if someone's not listening to you because we need to,
Yeah.
right? So it's
I
about
think it's so interesting, right? Your particular industry and what you do is so people centric, whereas so many of the other CEOs that we'll talk to in this series, they're product focused, right? Which we need. We need those solutions. But you are surrounded by human capital all the time, and that's so critical and hard when there's churn in this industry, and you've managed to keep them, right? A 5-year person in this industry is phenomenal, I think.
yeah,
So
and we've got tenure people. It
that's
just, they're fewer, like, but
right.
everybody's hitting these milestones. It's exciting. And the other thing, Bill, is we are building innovative tech. When we see something that's being done inefficiently, I'll give you an example. Like we have a lot of clients who I didn't realize this was such a problem for so long, but they really hate their vulnerability management reporting. I don't know. I didn't
Interesting.
know they hated it so much. No one ever told me that.
Huh.
And so we started building some stuff off of data lakes and Power BI, and they're looking at it and saying like, I want that. Like that's a better visualization. So now we're innovating in visualization and helping organizations replace tools that cost three or $400,000 a year at a fraction of the price.
Wow.
So
That
so
is
so so looking at problem spaces, and a lot of it, as you said, your members' budgets are frozen or flat or sometimes declining. Is how can we solve these problems more cheaply than we used to? And it's not, and the answer is not always AI. The
right.
answer is
It
a
isn't
little
always
bit AI, but
right.
sometimes it's just well,
Well, massaging the data you already have in a different
yeah, and
way.
maybe we don't need a whole new commercial product to do this one thing. Maybe there was a way to do it without that.
Yeah, interesting. Tim, you're really very interesting. I've known you for such a long time and I have such high respect for you. Oftentimes referring members your direction because of that. Because everyone says if I interact with Tim, the results are always phenomenal. So we're proud
Thank you.
to have a relationship with you. So thanks for agreeing to share openly some interesting things about what you're doing at SRA